Well, welcome on this Memorial Day. I am glad you remembered to look into this little bit of time that we have together, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity to come on this very special day. We all are sobered, stirred, moved by the thoughts of the men and women of the past who have laid their lives down for our freedom, and we should. And we cannot remember enough, frankly, what it has taken for us to have the nation that we have. And I'd like to take that thought and go to a very familiar verse that has been one that is a constant help, and I think has especially been a help in these days, and that's Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. Be careful or anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known unto God. What I'd like to draw out of that verse is the word thanksgiving. Now, this verse is such a help. God gives us an imperative here. We are not to live with anxiety. It is natural for us to get somewhat fearful, to react to something that happens, and we certainly have had some things that have bothered us. But this is basically saying we ought not continue on in an anxious spirit. God's not given us a spirit of fear, but instead everything that's on our heart we need to lay out before the Lord. But the key in having effectiveness in laying out the burdens that we have is to have the right attitude with thanksgiving. Now, here on this Memorial Day, we have a lot of things going on, a lot of things that concern us, a lot of things we need to pray about that would cause us to be anxious. But let's thank God for what we do have. Let's stop and make this a day of gratefulness that we do live in the United States of America, that we still do have religious freedom, and some of the concerns we've had about how things are handled have been brought to light, and there is a great pushback, which means that there is still a great value for religious freedom in our country. There is a great value for freedom in general in our country. And all of this goes back to our forefathers who had biblical principles and laid down the foundation for a country that took into account the need for freedom, the need for checks and balances. We need to be thankful for that. We need to be thankful that there were many Christians in those early days and throughout each phase of our history that called upon God, prayed and fasted, had influence in our government, had influence across the nation for good. I think especially of those that led out in the Second Great Awakening from 1800 to 1840s. That's a long time, over 4 decades of revival. Thank God for those people. Thank the Lord for the precious folks, as we've already said, that laid their lives down for the sake of freedom as different onslaughts of pressure came upon us to overcome that in our country, both here and abroad. And we need to just think of all that God has done for us. Now, folks, let me just say this. And it's been said a couple of times from our pulpit. Hearing from our missionaries helps me realize there are ways to handle this crisis, and then there are ways to handle this crisis. And really, as much as we're frustrated about some things, you have no idea what people in other countries have gone through. They literally have not been able to work, to be able to eat. They have not gotten the medical care that they needed. They've had dictatorial control over their lives. They have been in danger. Christians have been persecuted. This has been used as an excuse to further government purposes in a way that we cannot even imagine. And even though some of that sounds a little familiar here maybe to you, aren't you thankful for the freedom we do have? So attitude makes all the difference. Let's be thankful. Let's not be bitter. Let's don't blame. Let's don't push back. Let's don't have a rebellious spirit. Let's not be anxious for anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, bring it all to the Lord with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. That peace will come. So let's thank the Lord for our freedom. Let's thank the Lord for America. Let's thank the Lord for what he did for us on the cross. We are a blessed people, and may God give you a glorious Memorial Day.